Imagine this, a bright, sunny morning on the bustling campus of a small-town university. The air is electric with the nervous energy of students, all rushing to their final exams. Among them is Claire, a diligent, kind-hearted young woman with dreams as big as her heart. For weeks, she's been burning the midnight oil, poring over her notes, and meticulously preparing for this very day. This exam isn't just any test. It's her ticket to a scholarship she desperately needs to continue her studies. Everything she's worked for hinges on this moment. But fate has a funny way of showing up when you least expect it. As Claire strides toward the exam hall, her mind racing through formulas and essay outlines, she hears a faint cry for help. She hesitates, her heart pounding, unsure if she's imagined it. Then she hears it again, clearer this time. It's coming from a narrow alley behind the library. Against her better judgment, she veers off course, her exam momentarily forgotten. In the dimly lit alley, she finds an older man slumped against the wall, clutching his chest, his face pale and beads of sweat trickling down his temple. He's struggling to speak, but his eyes plead for help. Claire's heart sinks. She doesn't know who he is, and she doesn't care. All she knows is that he needs her. "Sir, are you okay?" she asks, kneeling beside him, her voice trembling. He shakes his head weakly. "I think it's my heart." Claire's thoughts race. She has no medical training, but she knows she can't just leave him there. She pulls out her phone and dials emergency services, her hands shaking as she explains the situation. The operator assures her that an ambulance is on the way, but it might take some time due to heavy traffic in the area. Time, that's the one thing she doesn't have. Her exam starts in 15 minutes. As the seconds tick by, Claire makes a decision that will change her life forever. She stays. She grips the man's hand, speaking softly to reassure him. She calls out to passersby, hoping someone else might step in to help. But most people avert their eyes and keep walking. Frustration wells up in her, but she channels it into action, doing everything she can to keep the man conscious and calm. Minutes feel like hours, and with each passing moment, Claire feels the weight of her choice pressing down on her. She imagines her professor announcing the start of the exam, the clock ticking away, and her empty seat glaringly obvious. She thinks of the scholarship, her parents' sacrifices, and the dreams she's worked so hard to achieve. But when she looks into the man's eyes, filled with pain and fear, she knows she's exactly where she's supposed to be. Finally, the distant wail of sirens cuts through the tension. Paramedics rush in, their movements swift and efficient. They thank Claire for her quick thinking and assure her that the man is in good hands. One of them tells her, almost as an afterthought, "You might have saved his life." As the ambulance speeds away, Claire glances at her phone. The exam is halfway over. There's no way she can make it now. The weight of her decision hits her all at once, and for a moment, she feels the sting of regret. But deep down, she knows she made the right choice. What Claire doesn't know is that the man she just helped isn't just anyone. He's a reclusive millionaire with a story of his own. A story that's about to intertwine with hers in ways she could never imagine. And this is where the real story begins. Claire walked back to her dorm in a daze, her bag hanging limply over her shoulder. The usually vibrant campus felt muted, as though the weight of her decision had dimmed everything around her. She passed a group of friends laughing near the fountain and felt a pang of envy. Their biggest worry seemed to be whether they'd pass their exams, while hers was whether she had just thrown her future away. Once inside her room, she sank onto her bed, staring at her phone. There was a missed call from her mom. She couldn't bring herself to call back, not yet. How could she explain that she had missed the most important exam of her life? She had always been the responsible one, the one her parents proudly called their little achiever. They had sacrificed so much to help her get to this point, and now it felt like she'd let them down. For the next few days, Claire avoided her professors and classmates. The exam results came out, and as expected, her name wasn't on the list. Without that score, her scholarship application was void. She considered emailing her professor to explain what had happened, but every time she started typing, she stopped. What if they didn't believe her? Or worse, what if they did? But it didn't matter. Rules were rules. Meanwhile, the man she had helped, Richard Hale, lay in a private hospital room, recovering from what doctors had called a mild heart attack. He was in his late 60s, with salt and pepper hair and a sharp gaze that belied his frail condition. Richard was a self-made millionaire, known in business circles for his shrewdness and secrecy. He had made his fortune in real estate, but his personal life was a mystery to most. No family, no close friends, just a few trusted employees who handled his affairs. As he regained his strength, Richard couldn't stop thinking about the young woman who had stayed with him that day. He remembered the look in her eyes, not fear, but determination. She hadn't hesitated to help a complete stranger, even though it clearly came at a cost to her. He asked one of his assistants to find out more about her, but the details were sparse. All they could tell him was her name, Claire, and that she was a student at the nearby university. Richard felt a pang of guilt. He knew she had missed something important because of him. The paramedics had mentioned her urgency and how she had repeatedly checked her watch while waiting for them to arrive. He wondered if there was a way to repay her, but he wasn't sure where to start. He wasn't the type to dole out charity. He believed in hard work and earning your way. Yet something about Claire's selflessness stayed with him. Back on campus, Claire was trying to pick up the pieces of her life. She started working more hours at the campus cafe to save up for next semester's tuition. Her friends noticed her growing exhaustion, but she brushed off their concerns. The idea of dropping out was unbearable, so she did everything she could to keep going. Still, the weight of her decision lingered. Every time she saw her classmates discussing future plans, it reminded her of the opportunities she might have lost. One afternoon, as she wiped down tables at the cafe, a man in a tailored suit walked in. He looked out of place among the students with their hoodies and laptops. He approached the counter and asked for Claire. She froze, her heart racing. Who was he? Did this have something to do with the man she had helped? The man introduced himself as Mr. Turner, an assistant to Richard Hale. He handed her a sleek black envelope and said, "Mr. Hale would like to thank you personally. This is an invitation to meet him." Claire stared at the envelope, unsure whether to feel excited or nervous. Why would a millionaire want to meet her? She opened it later that night, finding a handwritten note inside. It was short and to the point. "Claire, I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. Please allow me to meet you and discuss how I can help. Richard Hale." The next day, Claire found herself standing outside a luxurious penthouse apartment. She almost turned back twice, unsure if this was the right decision. But curiosity won out, and she pressed the doorbell. Richard greeted her himself, looking much healthier than the last time she'd seen him. He thanked her again, his voice steady but warm, and invited her to sit. As they talked, Claire shared her story, her dreams of becoming a lawyer, her struggles to make ends meet, and the scholarship she had missed because she stayed to help him. Richard listened intently, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned back in his chair and said something that caught her completely off guard. "Claire," he began, "I can't give you back the time you lost, but I believe in rewarding people who do the right thing. What if I told you I have an opportunity that might change your life?" Her pulse quickened. What kind of opportunity? Richard smiled faintly. "That depends." How far are you willing to go to make your dreams come true? His words lingered in the air, heavy with implication. Claire didn't know it yet, but the decision she was about to make would test everything she believed in. And as Richard's true intentions slowly came to light, she would find herself caught in a web of choices and consequences that would lead to a moment she could never have anticipated. Claire sat across from Richard, her hands gripping the edge of her chair. His question hung in the air, echoing in her mind. How far was she willing to go? She didn't know how to answer. She had already sacrificed so much, and now this man, this stranger whose life she had saved, was offering her something she couldn't yet define. Was it help? A second chance? Or was there a catch? Richard leaned forward, his sharp eyes softening just a little. I have a foundation, he began, his voice calm but commanding. It's focused on helping young people who show potential but lack resources. People like you. I'd like to sponsor your education, cover everything, if you're willing to take on a role within the foundation once you graduate. Claire blinked, struggling to process his words. You do that. Why? He smiled faintly. Because you helped me when no one else did. You didn't know who I was, yet you chose to stay. That kind of character is rare. And honestly, I could use someone like you in my corner. Someone with heart, integrity, and a mind sharp enough to take on the world. It felt too good to be true. Claire's instincts told her to be cautious. But as she looked at Richard, she saw no ulterior motives in his expression, only sincerity and a genuine desire to make amends. I don't know what to say, she finally whispered. Say yes, Richard replied with a small grin. Over the next few months, Claire's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. With Richard's backing, she re-enrolled in her classes and even retook the exam she had missed. The foundation's support covered her tuition and living expenses, allowing her to focus entirely on her studies. But this wasn't just a handout. Richard made sure of that. He treated her like a mentee, guiding her, challenging her, and pushing her to think beyond her comfort zone. As their relationship grew, Claire learned more about Richard's life. Beneath his gruff exterior was a man who had built his empire from nothing, driven by a hunger to succeed and a fear of failure. But in his pursuit of wealth, he had lost sight of the things that truly mattered: human connection, purpose, and trust. Helping Claire, he admitted one evening, was as much about her as it was about finding redemption for himself. The foundation became a cornerstone of their bond. Richard entrusted Claire with real responsibilities, and she quickly proved herself. She organized initiatives, advocated for other students in need, and even spearheaded a campaign to expand the foundation's reach. For the first time in years, Richard seemed genuinely inspired, and Claire felt like she was finally making a difference. But as graduation approached, Claire faced a new challenge. The board of the foundation, a group of stern, skeptical executives, began questioning her role. They saw her as an outsider, someone who had been handed opportunities without earning them. One member even went as far as to suggest that her position was a result of Richard's sentimental whims. Claire was furious but kept her composure. She knew she couldn't afford to let emotions dictate her actions. Instead, she poured her energy into proving them wrong. She presented a detailed proposal for a new scholarship program, complete with funding plans and projections. Richard stood by her, backing her ideas and reminding the board why he had placed his trust in her. The tension came to a head at a crucial board meeting, where Claire defended her proposal with everything she had. Her voice was steady, her arguments airtight, and her passion unmistakable. When she finished, the room was silent. Then, one by one, the board members nodded in agreement. Claire's program was approved. As the meeting adjourned, Richard pulled her aside. "You've got what it takes, Claire," he said, his voice brimming with pride. Never let anyone make you doubt that. Graduation day arrived, and as Claire walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she spotted Richard in the audience, clapping louder than anyone else. It was a moment of triumph, not just for her, but for both of them. She had earned her success, and he had found a renewed sense of purpose. Later that evening, as they sat together at the Foundation's annual gala, Claire turned to Richard. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice thoughtful. "I want to use what I've learned here to help more people like me, who just need a chance." Richard smiled, his eyes glinting with approval. "Then you're exactly where you're meant to be." Their story wasn't about wealth or charity, it was about choices. The choice Claire made to help a stranger, not knowing the cost. The choice Richard made to repay her kindness, not out of obligation, but out of respect. And the choices they both continued to make, day after day, to build something meaningful together. As the night wore on and the gala lights dimmed, Claire felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not just for Richard or the opportunity she had been given, but for the reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can ripple out in ways you can never predict. Sometimes helping a stranger doesn't just change their life, it changes yours.